Welcome to Inspired Change, a new inspirational and motivational broadcast that strives to empower men in a positive way, designed to educate, empower, and inspire even the busiest individual on the go over that first cup of coffee. Please join me in welcoming Gunter, international psychologist, author, speaker, and producer.
Okay, welcome back everybody. Thanks for joining me again on our journey to inspire change. Now let me, firstly, before I do anything else, extend a very, very warm thank you to my partner, my wife, and my collaborator who joined me in my last hour-long podcast. And I hope those of you who listened to it found it interesting and inspiring and, provided a lot of food for thought. Just to give you a heads up, we're going to be doing that fairly regularly. So expect expect more segments on conversations with my wife for current affair. And as we said in that particular podcast, we're actually going to come down from the lofty heights of thinking about things very, very broadly to examining particular issues significantly more in depth. Because we do want everybody to get something quite serious out of that, sometimes a little bit lighthearted, but also really give people the impetus to reflect on their life and to make decisions about how they are in their life that allow them to be better, not just do stuff better. Okay, I want to make that a really important distinction. I spent an enormous amount of time with men who do lots and lots of stuff, and a lot of it's really good, a lot of it's very great, but they're not good at necessarily being in themselves. Often their successes are driven by fear or simply automatic behaviour, social expectations, social competition, status, all those sorts of things. And I know from experience over many decades of working with people that ultimately that approach leads to distress and in some cases psychological disorders, and in some cases you can throw in some physical illnesses as well. Okay, and I'm sure no one wants to really experience that. All of us really want to get into a place where, firstly, we can be better, we can do better, and we can influence our families and communities in a constructive and beneficial way in the long term. Okay? So, I went out for a walk earlier on this morning, just to sort of stretch the legs, get my several thousand steps in, really trying to focus on, one, trimming down a bit, and secondly, improving my fitness because my shoulder injuries have meant that I've not been able to surf, and the types of exercises in the gym that I can do are actually quite limited in many respects. So walking's become a very important part of that regime. And so I was watching also lots of other people either leisurely strolling or walking with a distinct purpose, obviously for fitness, the sort of brisk walkers. And it made me reflect about how people are, generally speaking, and men especially, very quick to focus on their physical, their bodily well-being. We invest in going to the gym. We buy leisure wear just as a little boost to ourselves and also because it's comfortable. So a lot of time and money goes into this physical aspect of our being, and a lot of it's about doing. So we can elevate it. For example, cycling. Again, there's a particular fashion that goes with that, but also a particular piece of equipment. Now, I remember the first time I sort of spoke to someone who was, heavily into cycling, and he told me how much he spent on his bike, and my longest standing discomfort about how much I spend on surfboards instantly evaporated. Those bikes are seriously exy. So I went, hey, I'm actually not that expensive to keep in my sport. That should make a difference at home when I want a new board. So, not to make too light a situation of this, the question that I've got, especially for most of the men, and I want to talk specifically to men here whose aspirations is to elevate themselves from good to great, is how much time do you actually spend on firstly examining your thinking, your feeling, the relationship between the two, and how much time do you spend on improving that area of you? Now, with my clinical experience and coaching experience and just generally working with people, I'm going to hazard a guess, and that is that it's not too many. Usually most of us start to ponder this problem when we're in crisis, when we're actually confronting a problem. It could be something at work, it could be a health issue, it could be my relationship with my wife or my relationship with my children. It is deteriorating and I'm being told I need to do something. So usually that's my first venture into this foray of, examining my life. And as Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living. And there's truth in that, because if I'm just going to cruise along automatically in my pre-programmed narrative, script, program, whatever it is that you want to call it, the chances are I'm going to run into trouble at some point. And again, let me highlight that. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be psychological, and it could be social. All of the above. Okay? So, as you know, I've done a few podcasts now on the importance of critical thinking and the idea of rational versus irrational beliefs. And so in this podcast, I want to start talking about how we can exercise that cognitive muscle and generate an emotional flexibility and resilience that is going to really help us elevate ourselves, really help us to evolve. Okay, it's really, really important. Now, if I said to any one of you guys out there, I want you to stop the gym that you're going to, I want you to stop the exercise that you do and just veg along, most of you guys would be horrified. Some of you might even be tempted to dob me into my professional board for misconduct or, unprofessional conduct, behaviour. Right now, I'm not going to do that. But imagine it, right? Intuitively that that's rubbish, right? We need to exercise. All the statistics, all the science behind it clearly tells us that when we exercise, not only are we feeling physically better, that we're fitter, we're more resilient, but it's also true mentally. Okay? So let me give you a little bit of a structure again before we move on, and I've done this before in other episodes. Okay, so when someone comes to see me, first off, one of the things that I look at is a framework of 4 levels. The first one is the physical, and there's 4 areas that I particularly spend a fair bit of time in that. One is about examining how well that person sleeps, the level of exercise they pursue, and the intensity of exercise they pursue, the fact of whether they do or do not do relaxation. And let me stress again, exercise is not the same as relaxation. And if you want me to explain the differences, let me know. At some point I'll go back into that. Okay. And the other aspect is nutrition. Now, the reason why I get into nutrition, despite the fact that that's not my skill set, is not because I know a bucket load of stuff nutritionally, although, as a layperson, I think I'm not too bad. But I include anything that goes into our body, that gets processed in our body, and eliminated through our body as part of our nutrition. Okay, so now what does that include? It includes alcohol and drugs. Now, a lot of you will go, well, I don't do any drugs. Okay, and I might go, well, that's fine, that's good, but how much do you drink? Now, that's where it gets tricky. Now, especially during the pandemic, a lot of us have realised that our alcohol consumption has elevated significantly. That, we really fundamentally need to cut back. I go shopping and I watch people just load up the boot of their car with booze. And I go, certainly not good. Now, ironically, during this period of time, domestic violence has also increased. Now, we know, all of us in the profession, that alcohol abuse and domestic violence often go hand in hand. Okay? So the next thing that I look at is I look at how the person constructs their mental, their cognitive world. Okay? So what's that comprised of? Fundamentally, that's comprised of their values, attitudes, beliefs, self-talk, cognitive biases, stories that they carry with them as fact, all those sort of things. Now, why do I do that? Well, because fundamentally, all of that has a direct bearing on my emotional state, my emotional being. All right? So coming back to what I was saying in the last podcast, when I was flying solo on irrational beliefs, is they contribute significantly to stress, distress, anxiety, and depression. Things are neither good nor bad, but thinking makes them so. Now, that's one aspect. The other aspect of it is our emotional state. Okay? So we need to really get on top of looking at how the two interrelate. As we know, the way that I think affects how I feel. I was watching a video of my grandson putting something together. He's 5 years old. His dad's a very successful businessman and in the trades, who's very actively involved with both of his boys, teaching them how to do stuff. And somehow my eldest grandson got stuck with something that he was trying to do, and he was getting frustrated, and he turns to his dad and he goes, "Dad, I can't do it." And as quick as a flash, my son-in-law turned around and says, "Well, with that attitude, you won't." And I think that's a really important aspect. Now, again, most of us as men are going to go, "Well, yeah, that's a given. I mean, I have to have the right attitude to do stuff." Now, I'm going to challenge something. That's not enough. You also have to have the right attitude to be emotionally flexible and adaptable and resilient. Right? Your thinking is going to determine how you're going to deal with the sorts of challenges that life throws in your path. Okay? So, from going from good to great means that we need to be exercising ourselves towards being an advanced thinker, but also then the next stage, which is the master thinker. Okay? So the advanced thinker is not quite yet at the master level, because one of the things that's missing is the more encompassing approach to thinking about all aspects of my life, not just a narrow part of it. So, that doesn't mean that the advanced thinker is pointless or useless. We need to spend some time there, because what we need to do is we need to be at ease with a certain level of self-critique, especially that rational approach to self-critique. Otherwise, self-critique becomes self-destructive. So among the key traits in this area that really support that stage is that we need to generate some intellectual insight, right? And that comes through generating new thought habits. We need to approach things from an intellectual integrity, and that is that we need to recognize areas of inconsistency and contradictions in our own life. We also need to be aware of intellectual empathy, and that is intellectually being able to put oneself in the place of others in order to really, genuinely understand them. And the other part is what's called intellectual courage. That is to confront ideas, beliefs that I don't necessarily believe in, but I have negative feelings towards because I want to understand why I have those and are they well founded. Now, as the master thinker, I'm going to be taking this to the next level where I'm constantly seeking to improve my skills and examine my experience through regularly raising my thinking to a level of conscious insight and realization. I'm reflective. And that takes me into gaining deep insights into the deeper mental levels, almost subconscious. Can I raise what is subconscious to that level of awareness where, I can really commit myself to being fair, but more importantly, can I gain control over my narcissism so that it doesn't blow out as it does in so many people. And sometimes as men, we don't recognize that we're being narcissistic because we're raised, in a way that, we need to be competitive and, it's about me. And we have become a very all about me society. Right? It's not helpful. So at this level of thinking, we've got the skills that we're examining, also the assumptions about what weaknesses, logic and biases mean. And more importantly than anything else, I'm not going to be offended at this level, at the master thinker level, when someone challenges me. Rather than what I'm going to do is really hear that person, to listen to that person without getting defensive, without getting critical or frustrated or angry. Okay, so again, this is all like exercise in the gym, except it's not your physical muscles, it's your mental, emotional muscle. Okay, so how can we differentiate between a rational belief and an irrational belief? I'm going to give you 3 questions. And I'm going to challenge you to apply this regularly and systematically. Now, the first question is, does my belief help me or hinder me in the long run? Okay, in rational emotive behavior therapy, we talk about immediate needs gratification as opposed to delaying gratification. In other words, long-term hedonism. Look up the word if it's a challenge. This is also useful to helping you generate a higher level of thinking. Okay? Question 2. Is my belief consistent with known facts and reality? Now, most of us who are checking out social media and are listening to the media, to politicians, to certain people in the spotlight, yeah, that question should really just be on the forefront of our mind constantly, because to put it bluntly, a lot of newspapers, social media and so on just sprouts utter bullshit. Okay? Now, that also applies to me. Am I telling myself in my head some stuff that's just bullshit? Okay? Better or worse? And the third question that I need to ask myself, is my belief logical? And logical means thinking that makes sense. For example, if you said, you would very much like to succeed at something, does it logically follow that therefore you must succeed? Well, no, it doesn't. The necessity for success doesn't follow logically from the fact that that success would be useful, beneficial. Or another example, does it make sense to think because something's bad I can't stand it? Well, no. I mean, certainly anxiety is uncomfortable. And sometimes, when I've been anxious hanging off the side of a cliff, I've gone, this is really bad, and it was a bad decision to do this, right? It didn't kill me. In fact, probably made me somewhat stronger. Okay? Could I stand it? Absolutely. I managed it. Okay? Now, there are some times when you go, I can't stand this, and I pull the plug and move out of that. But again, sometimes it's useful to revisit that. So the challenge for all of you listeners, but especially men, is I want you to really reflect on this, because this is, as we keep saying, a time where we need to, think about where are we evolving to. At the moment, we appear to be devolving. We're regressing. Issues that should not be a problem in the 21st century, like racism, sexism, all the other isms, just we're going back to it. It's deeply, deeply disturbing. And it's going to take each and every one of us to move into a place where we elevate the level of rationality, logic and ethic and morality to a place where it should be. So until next time, I hope this is inspiring change, and it's going to encourage you to get a little better day by day. So hopefully you'll join me next time for another journey into the relationship between thinking and feeling. I'm going to pick up on that some more. And I really want to help you then put it into a practical day-by-day practice. Till next time, signing off.
Thank you, Gunter. And thank you for listening to Inspire Change with Gunter. Again, if you have any questions or comments or ideas for a show, you can email development@noirtainment.com. That's development@noirtainment.com. Thank you, and thank you for listening.